Right, welcome to the next book, The Brothers Karamazov. We're at book 4 now, entitled Crises. Chapter 1, Father Therapon. So, Elder 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤, let's call him ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤, 𝕬𝕚𝕤, says that he may not live to see the end of the day. This is to Alyosha. And then he gives a liturgy in which he talks of loving thy enemy and all that stuff, you know. He says, each one of us is unquestionably answerable for all men and all things on earth, not only by virtue of the collective guilt of the world, but also individually for all men and everyone on earth. So he goes on. Then we get notification from the Khokhlakovas. A letter comes in for Alyosha to say that the miracle has come true when Father 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤, Elder 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤, ℙ𝕦𝕦𝕤𝕤𝕤, what are we going to call him? See, when I first read this, he was known to me as Elder 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 back when I was a student. This translation calls him ℙ𝕦𝕦𝕤𝕤, and fathers are something different. Father Therapon is a father, which I think means he's a priest. But ℙ𝕦𝕦𝕤𝕤, or ℙ𝕦𝕦𝕤𝕤, which is the plural, elders, are not necessarily priests. In fact, they're not priests, or they would be called father. What do you think about that, Willow? It's complicated. But it's important because Father Therapon is a big character in this chapter. So, because I'm reading it as ℙ𝕦𝕦𝕤𝕤, but I'm thinking it in my head when I'm talking as elder. Anyway, moving on. There's a letter comes in to say that the mother who spoke to 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 about her son, and having not heard from him for a long time, 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 says, "Go home, ye little woman, and a letter will come. You will hear from him very soon." And she goes home, and indeed a letter does come from her son very soon. So she writes to Alyosha to ask him to tell everybody that the miracle has come true. And for some reason this is controversial. Not sure why. And we've got a visiting monk from St. Sylvester's who was there at that meeting with the women when this prophecy was given. And he goes to visit Father Therapon, who lives beside the apiary. And they have a discussion, and this old guy seems to be a wee bit devout to the point of madness. Believes that he sees Jesus in a tree, believes that he can see demons, and that there was one there on that day when 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 gave these prophecies, and he, this is Father Therapon, shut the door on the demon's tail so that it would stay there and die. So I don't know what's going on with that chapter. He claims to have seen the Holy Ghost in the shape of a dove or in different birds, tomtits and other birds. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that, actually, that whole scene with the visiting monk and Father Therapon. Don't really get it, what it's all about. Hopefully it'll be revealed. But then we get 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 and Alyosha again. 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤 says to Alyosha, "Did you have plans to go and visit your family today?" To which Alyosha says, "Yes." He goes, "Well, you better go. Off you go. Don't worry, I won't die before you come back. I have some final words for you." So Alyosha's pretty chuffed that he's going to be the one to get 𝕬𝕚𝕤𝕤's final words. And then Father Paisi stops Alyosha and gives him a bit of a lecture as well. Talks about secular science and how it's been unable to prove or disprove the the learnings of the Bible, even after 19 centuries. And Alyosha leaves feeling that Paisi is now his friend, whatever that might mean. Yeah, at the end he says, as for the unexpected and learned discourse which Father Paisi had just delivered, it was that and that alone which amply testified to the goodness of his heart. He felt he had to arm the immature mind as soon as possible for the struggle against temptation, and shield the young soul entrusted to his care with the most impregnable defence imaginable. So Father Paisi has blessed Alyosha and has now taken him on as a mentor in Zosima's place, I guess, is the idea. So that's chapter 1. See you in the next one. Book 4, chapter 2, At His Father's. So Alyosha goes to visit his father. He's kind of not welcome, even though his father had said the day before that Alyosha should go and see him. But then he's quite hostile to him. He's wearing bandages after getting beaten up by ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤. And the father threatens to put ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 away to press charges for the assault. But then talks himself out of it because he knows that if he were to do that, Grushenka would then go straight to ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤. But if he doesn't do it, Grushenka will come to him instead, out of sympathy for having been beaten up. That's what he thinks. He has a tot of brandy, just basically rants about the family. He talks of ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 saying, "I'll crush him like a cockroach. They make a crunching noise under my feet when I tread on them in the night. Your ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 will end up the same way. Your ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤, because you love him, don't you?" He says, "I couldn't care less if you do, but if Ivan were to love him, that would be different. But the fact is, Ivan doesn't love anybody." So this is the father talking. And then he says, "I wonder if ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 would go away for 5 years if I were to give him 1,000 or 2. And he considers it, but then retracts it, says, "No, I'm giving him nothing, not a kopeck. I'm going to crush him." So that's kind of it. And then he talks of Alyosha's love for him. Alyosha gives him a kiss and he says, "What was that for?" So, he's a bit, he's got his back up. But then he softens a bit and invites Alyosha to come back the next day for some fish soup. He's having fish soup today, but not the good stuff. He'll make the good stuff tomorrow, so Alyosha should come back. So that's it. Book 4, chapter 3, The Stone Throwing Incident. What's the title of the chapter here? An encounter with some schoolboys. So Alyosha's on his way to the Khokhlakovas, and on his way he sees 6 school kids aged 10 to 12-ish, armed with stones and throwing them at another boy of a similar age across the ditch. So he goes up to them and he's like, "When I was a kid, we used to wear our bag over the other shoulder so you could get your right hand into the bag." And then the narrator goes on to discuss how important it is when approaching a group of kids to establish authority straight away by coming out with a statement of fact that's indisputable or something like that. So that's what Alyosha does. And the boy says, "Aye, but he's left-handed." So, Levsha, I think it was. So, he's like, "Why are you chucking stones at that boy? You'll kill him. 6 against 1. That's not good." And they're like, "Yeah, he's a snitch. He deserves it. Killing's too good for him," is one of the phrases that's used. So Alyosha's like, "Well, that's no good." But then the kid across the ditch chucks stones at Alyosha. So Alyosha goes over and he's like, "What's up, kid? Why are you chucking stones?" And the kid ends up attacking Alyosha, chucks a stone at him and then bites his finger, like really hard into the bone. But Alyosha doesn't react. And I'm not sure what this chapter's all about. I looked up Dana's Substack, but she hasn't got a chat going for this chapter yet. So I look forward to seeing that when it comes out. Because I just don't know why this chapter's in there. Is it to show character development for Alyosha? That he's able to turn the other cheek, even when attacked. So this is an enemy of sorts, but also a young boy who's clearly got some issues. So, yeah, I'm just curious what this chapter's here for. And I'm also wondering whether it's something that refers back to an event in Dostoevsky's life. Because we did have that in Crime and Punishment, where Raskolnikov had a dream about a horse being beaten. And that is an incident that happened in Dostoevsky's life. So I'm curious to know about this stone throwing incident, whether it's... Yeah, because it's quite violent. And doesn't seem to serve the plot in any way, so why is it there? Book 4, Part 4, At the Khokhlakovas. Sounds almost Dutch, doesn't it? So Alyosha's going there with his bitten finger, remember? The boy that bit his finger. And Lise pretends not to have known that he was coming, but of course she did know, we're told. And she was beside herself with excitement. And it gets a bit weird. It's like she says to him when she has him in confidence, "Can you give me back that letter I sent you? It was just a joke." And Alyosha's like, "No, I don't have it on me." So Elise says, "Well, bring it then. Next time in fact, bring it straight away." And he says, "I can't, I'm going back to the monastery. Zosima's about to die, so it will be a few days at least." And then he says, "But my plans are that when Zosima dies, I'll go and take my exams and then we can get married." And she's like, "Oh, no, we can't get married." So she clearly loves Alyosha, but for some reason is pretending not to, despite having declared her love to him in a letter. And then at the end of the chapter, Mrs. Khokhlakova is talking to Alyosha and she says, where are we? She says, "Even though she loves your brother Ivan Fyodorovich, she's trying to convince herself that she loves your brother Dmitry Fyodorovich instead." What? Well, we know that she loves Alyosha, so we've got yet another bizarre love triangle. What's going on, man? But they do dress his wound. Yeah, there's not much more in the chapter really. It's really about Alyosha and Lise. Are they going to end up together? Don't know. Stay tuned. Part 4, Chapter 5, Crisis in the Drawing Room. So, we've got Alyosha and Ivan, both visiting Katerina Ivanovna at the Khokhlakovas. And Katerina Ivanovna is having a bit of a rant about her undying love for Dmitry. And so we learn that Alyosha's heart could not tolerate uncertainty because his love was always of an active kind. He could not love passively, which means he wants to help everyone in the best way that he can. So Dmitry and Katerina Ivanovna and Ivan. So he's kind of the piggy in the middle here. Katerina Ivanovna is saying that even if Dmitry goes and marries Grushenka, she'll pine in the wings for him and wait for him in the hope that one day the marriage will break up or she'll die or who knows what, and she'll be there in the wings waiting to console him. So that seems a bit self-sacrificial, and I was like, what's this all about, this self-sacrifice thing? So then, yeah, Alyosha explains to her that her love for Dmitri is misplaced and that she's wrong. She doesn't love him at all. She's using Dmitri I'll read it out. It says, your love for Dmitri is an obsession. Your love is a lie. You have simply persuaded yourself of it. And he says that you're torturing Ivan only because you love him. So that's what Alyosha thinks, that Katerina Ivanovna loves Ivan. But Ivan's like, no, she doesn't. And he goes on to say, Katerina Ivanovna has never loved me. She knew all along that I loved her, even though I never said a word to her about my love. She knew it, but she didn't love me. And he thinks that she's using him as a means of revenge for the insults that Dmitri has given her. Which doesn't really make sense. This is what Ivan thinks. He says, she was constantly taking revenge on me for all the insults she suffered at the hands of Dmitri, insults going back to their first meeting, because in her heart she has come to regard their very first meeting as an insult. Were he to reform, you'd discard him immediately and stop loving him altogether. So she's loving Dmitri because he's broken, because he treats her mean. Don't know. Anyway, Ivan's not having it and he leaves. Says, that's it, I'm gone. You'll never see me again. And then Katerina Ivanovna asks Alyosha if he will take 200 rubles and give it to an old staff captain who apparently Dmitri had beaten up in the tavern, dragged him out by his beard, humiliated him, and she wants to recompense him to the tune of 200 rubles. So it's like, what's going on? And then Madame Khokhlakova, after that, Katerina Ivanovna disappears and she's all upset and stuff. And Mrs. Khokhlakova says, never believe a woman's tears, Alexey Fyodorovich. In such cases, I'm always against the women and side with the men. And she thinks it's good that Katerina Ivanovna has become hysterical. So, and then Lise comes in and she's shouting at Alyosha. She wants him to stay, and he says, no, I've got to go. Lise, I must go. I can't tell you how desperate I am. I'm worried out of my mind, but I'll be back as soon as I can. And he dashed out of the room. So that chapter was called Crisis in the Drawing Room. The next one's called Crisis in the Tenement. So I can see from a glance that we're going to see the staff captain. What's going on, man? All these messed up relationships. It's crazy. Bit of evening sun in the garden. This is pretty nice, I have to say. What time is it? 7:20. Sun's just going down over there. It's pretty lush. So I've just finished part 4 of Brothers Karamazov. So the last chapter we spoke about was chapter 5. Chapters 6 and 7 are kind of a one big chapter really. Crisis in the Tenement, chapter 6, and then And in the Fresh Air, chapter 7, and we follow Alyosha. So if you remember, we left him on a mission from Katerina Ivanovna, who'd sent him to go and visit the staff captain, the one that DFK had beaten up.
Dmitry Fyodorovich Karamazov. And here's Willow. You're going to see Willow tonight? You going to jump up? She'll probably jump up and say hi. Coming? There she is. There she is. Have you come to be on YouTube? Have you? So yeah, he's on a mission to give some money to the family of the man that Dmitry beat up in the pub. He grabbed him by his beard and dragged him outside. So as he's going there, Alyosha for some reason has an inkling that the boy that bit his finger is actually the staff captain's son. I don't know why he has that inkling. We're not really told, but that's what he thinks. Turns out to be the case. So in chapter 6 we just get a description of the staff captain's family, and it's, you know, they're down on the luck. His wife isn't well, his daughter isn't well, like 2 daughters I think aren't well. His son is 9 years old and his son is getting a hard time at school. So this is when we move into the next chapter, chapter 7. We learn that the son, is it Ilyusha, has been getting grief from his school friends because his father is a coward. His father didn't take on Dmitry. He's not willing to offer him out in a duel. And he explains why. You know, he's the breadwinner, and if he gets wounded in a duel, who's going to feed the family? So he doesn't offer him out. There's talk of money for reparations, which he's not willing to take because he's too proud. And basically he explains to Alyosha, takes him to the side, and they go for a walk and talks to him about their situation. And Alyosha's like, yep, I hear you. I'll get Dmitry to come and apologise. He'll go down on his knees in the square and he'll apologise. And we learn that Ilyusha bit Alyosha's finger because basically for revenge for what had happened with Dmitry, because the son knows that Alyosha is a Karamazov. So that's where that came from. And yeah, it's a bit of a sad scene really when we hear about how destitute the family is. And so Alyosha's like, well, I've got 200 rubles here. It's from Katerina Ivanovna. It's not from me, it's not from Dmitry. Will you accept? And the captain gets all tearful and emotional and explains just how useful this money will be, and that you'll be able to get medicine and mineral water and all kinds of stuff to help his daughters and his wife. And his son had talked about buying a horse and a cart and going off and making a life elsewhere in a different province. And you know, all the while I was reading that, I was feeling like he's not going to accept, is he? Sure enough, after going through that big long emotional speech about how helpful this money will be, he ends up refusing it, scrunches it up, stamps on it into the dirt and says no, and he heads off saying, I will never take this money, my honour can't be bought. And he goes off with tears in his eyes. It's a very sad scene. And then Alyosha picks up the rubles, straightens them out, and that's the end of part 4. So, quite apart. Part 4, we've learned a lot about all kinds of relationships with Groshenka and Katerina Ivanovna and the 3 brothers, and the father. So, yeah, what do you think is going to happen? Alyosha's probably going to head back to the monastery, I would think, because remember, Stariet's Zosima is at death's door. So Alyosha's going to have to go back and see to that. Dimitri's gone off, we know not where. Doesn't want anything to do with Katerina Ivanovna. And Ivan, where's he gone? I can't actually remember. You'll probably remember better than I, because I've been spreading this part out over quite a long time. And we're going to book 5 next, which is titled Pros and Cons. We'll see what happens. The first words are Mrs. Khokhlakova. So we'll see where we go with that. Chapter's entitled Betrothal. Remember, Alexei, Alyosha had agreed to marry Lise. Will that go ahead? Stay tuned and find out. I'll see you in book 5.